Hi, everyone, and welcome back to the Non-Traditional Nurse. Today, I'm really happy to have Amanda Bamba with us. Thanks so much for joining us, Amanda.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me.
Now, I am really excited to have Amanda talk to us today about legal nurse consulting because it's something I wasn't super familiar with, and I've learned a lot just in connecting with Amanda and our intro calls. So I think the audience is going to have a lot to learn today about a really cool profession. So let's get started. So, Amanda, can you just start by sharing where your nursing career has taken you and how it led you to becoming a legal nurse consultant?
Sure. I started nursing here in Hawaii, and after 2 years of working at a really high risk labor and delivery unit, I always knew I wanted to travel and be a travel nurse. And so after 2 years on that unit, I was like, I think I can take this anywhere. And so I was a travel nurse for 3 years. And for whatever reason, as a traveler, I got put on these mailing lists, and I was getting all of these emails from these legal nurse consulting programs. And some of them were really expensive and really involved. But it was enough to get me interested in thinking about what really is this and what does it entail and what does it require of me, in terms of schooling or education. And because I was a traveler and really busy and just enjoying my young life, I didn't, dive too much into it. But after I had my first son, we moved back to the islands in Hawaii, and I worked as the director of health services for a school. And there is a lot involved in that in terms of the legal aspects of nursing and just making sure that you have um, kind of all your ducks in a row, and you're doing best practice, and you're documenting that and making sure that everything you have is you're doing everything that you did in the hospital, but it's a little bit different in the setting of a school. That was brand new for me. And so that kind of reinterested me in the legal nurse consulting world. And last year, I had the opportunity to quit my job as the director of health services and really dive into legal nurse consulting. I was very fortunate to have that opportunity. And so that's how I ended up here where I am now.
Perfect. Yeah, that is such a cool opportunity to be able to really go after it. It takes the right time and a lot of right
Yeah.
circumstances. So that's
Yes.
great.
Yes.
So, something that I was a bit confused about, can you just explain the role of a legal nurse consultant and how it differs from that of like an expert witness in a legal case?
Sure. It doesn't have to be different. They can be different, and they can be the same. So there are some nurses and physicians that are just expert witnesses, meaning they are experts in their field of practice, and they're used by plaintiff or defense to look at the medical records that are provided and provide their expert opinion based on those records. Now, in legal nurse consulting, you can be an expert witness, or you can do what we call behind the scenes work, which is strictly um, out of the courtroom, out of deposition testimony, and you're just reviewing medical records and creating what we call work product for the attorney, whether that's merit review, where we look at medical records and then decide, yes, I agree that there is substance behind this that can be pursued, or you know what, I think that the providers did everything that they could. And although the outcome was not what was anticipated or expected by the patient, there really wasn't anything that was done wrong. There wasn't any breach in standard of care. Best practice was followed. And so they can be separate, but they can also be the same. There are also legal nurse consultants who do both. They do behind the scenes work, and they're experts in their field. Oftentimes, attorneys want experts who are currently clinically active and still at the bedside. Sometimes they don't, but that's typically what's expected, is that you are still at the bedside and providing care one-on-one with patients. But that really is attorney dependent.
Okay. And then as a legal nurse consultant, you don't necessarily need to be currently working at the bedside. Is that right?
No, if you're doing behind the scenes work, then you don't need to be clinically active. There are legal nurse consultants who left bedside 30 years ago, and they've been doing legal nurse consulting since and have built, these big, robust practices as a result.
Okay. So there's, yeah, tons of different options with that.
Yes. Hmm.
When it comes to, the skills that you pull from bedside nursing, what's really been valuable for you in transitioning to becoming a legal nurse consultant?
That's truly, it's critical thinking, and it's thinking outside the box, and it's thinking, oftentimes we know at bedside our patients might say one thing to us, but we have to think, what are they not saying? What are they, maybe they just don't know how to express it, or what are they not sharing with me that might be important to their care? And that's something that's really important in legal nurse consulting, is you really have to think critically about what the situation was. How do you see that it unfolded based on what you're reviewing in the medical records? And were things really missed? Or did the providers and the nurses, did they ask all the right questions? Did they follow that standard of care? But I think without that critical thinking aspect, it's not just checking boxes. There is standard of care and best practice that we follow, but you have to know when to implement certain aspects of that and how to kind of pull it all together. And so that's something that I've carried with me from bedside to now this career.
Yeah, and critical thinking is obviously one of our number one things as a nurse. Did making that switch feel intimidating for you?
Initially it really did. And that's where the help and support of the legal nurse community was very important in my growth as a legal nurse consultant, because now people are afraid of the law. We want to follow the rules, and no one wants to have to call an attorney or talk to an attorney. And now I'm having to call attorney offices and talk to them daily, right? And even though I'm not the person being deposed, it's still really, initially especially, was really um, just kind of a daunting task, because that's not something that we do. And so it to answer your question, yes, it was really intimidating, but you have to be comfortable knowing that I am a good nurse. I know best practice. I know standard of care from my field. I did it every day at the bedside. It's no different now. I simply have to take that and look at these records and say, yes, it was followed, or no, it wasn't. Or you have to be really comfortable to be like, you know what? I didn't do orthopedics. I'm really not comfortable with this. But here's a list of legal nurse consultants that I think would do a great job to review these records for you, and being okay saying you don't know.
Yeah, honesty for sure makes a lot of sense in
Hmm.
that, making the right decisions and,
Right.
giving your clients what they need.
Hmm.
And I know you've talked a lot about what a supportive community legal nurse consulting is and when you were getting
Hmm.
started, like outreaching to people. So, what are some of the resources that you found to be really helpful when you were starting your career as an LNC?
That's a great question. And so, you know, I did what most people would do initially, and I went to the Google and I was like, Google, tell me more about this career, you know? And I found really quickly that LinkedIn has a big community of legal nurse consultants. And so I kind of just, I dove in and I started following LNCs. And I was really quiet for a long time, just observing, listening to the question, or seeing the questions that were being asked, and slowly starting to make connections with people. I have seen some newer LNCs just jump on and be like, hey, tell me how to do this. And it's like, well, it's really important that you come with questions after having done some of your own research, because otherwise you're starting like, we don't know how to answer, we don't know what you know and what you don't know, right?
Sure.
And so, and then once I had made a few connections on LinkedIn, I had taken a course, a legal nurse consulting course, which is not necessary to do in order to be an LNC, but I felt for me it was very helpful to be able to just see that different aspect of law. And the text that we studied in the course was a text written by the American Association of Legal Nurse Consultants, the AALNC, which is LNC's professional organization. And so during the course that I took, we were able, cover to cover, to review that book and really read the legal aspects that are involved, and know a little bit more about the law, because that's not typically something that nurses, you know outside of what they do every day. So meeting other LNCs on LinkedIn was very helpful to begin with. Taking that course was really helpful because we reviewed the AALNC book. And then I really took a leap of faith and I went to what is called the AALNC Forum, which is like the gathering every year of all these legal nurse consultants. And I flew by myself from Hawaii all the way to Pittsburgh. And it took me 3 days to get there, but it was worth it. It was worth every second just to meet people face to face, to make real, in-person friends with legal nurse consultants instead of them just being LinkedIn friends. They put on this beautiful just composition of speakers and activities, and ways to really get involved in the organization. And so that was really helpful for me to go to see and speak to people who do this every day. This is their job. Some of them are bedside part-time and some of them are LNCs full-time. And it was just really nice to see all the different avenues that are involved in the job.
Yeah, what a treat to actually meet people in
Yeah.
person in this virtual
Yes.
world we live in,
Yes.
for sure. And I follow a lot of legal nurse consultants now. I'm, adding some to my LinkedIn, and
Hmm.
I really love following them because I feel like they're just offering all of these tidbits of knowledge of different things that, I had never run into in my nursing career. So I feel like it's very
Hmm.
educational, and I've enjoyed that a lot.
Yeah. Yes.
And one of the really cool things I think about legal nurse consulting is the unique level of flexibility compared to a lot of other nursing roles. So, can you talk about, how you can structure your workload? You could do it part time, full time, and how that works.
Sure. So essentially, there are legal nurse consultants who work in law firms, but I feel like that's more few and far between. And then there are legal nurse consultants we own our own businesses. And so when you are the boss of your own business, you get to decide how much work you want to take, how little work you want to take. There is a lot of opportunity for what we call subcontracting work, where there are these legal nurse consultants, like I referenced earlier, that have these big, robust practices. And they have a number of LNCs that work underneath them so that they can take more cases, right, for their legal nurse consulting firm. And so I started initially doing subcontracting work, just working for a bunch of different LNCs, and they go to the attorneys and they get the work and then they bring it to me and say, hey, do you want to do this merit review? Do you want to create this chronology? And so really it can be as much or as little as you want. The biggest hurdle that I think legal nurse consultants find is in the marketing. It's how do I get my name out there? How do I get attorneys or other LNCs to know, like, and trust me? And that does not come quick. That takes time. It takes time for people to get to know you and trust the work that you do is good work. Um, so ultimately, it really can be as much or as little as you want. And if you're an expert witness, you still need to maintain that bedside, like we had talked about. So you can, if you work 312s, you have 4 days to do LNC work if you want.
Yeah, and really something probably way outside of most nurses' brains is, building their own personal brand. So that can
Yes.
be something that is probably very exciting for some people and very daunting for others, but,
Hmm.
learning new skills as you go for sure.
Well, yeah, and that's where I felt like subcontracting was really helpful. And no one in this community has ever said to me, "Well, that's a weird question. Why would you ask that?" Or that was terrible work product, when you were just beginning. And so I think everybody has been so inviting, and doing subcontracting work, you're able to ask those questions to people who have a lot of experience and who have done this for a long time, and really just to grow yourself. And you have to be open to feedback. And I don't think any feedback is bad feedback. It's all good,
Yes.
because we're learning, right? And when you are working for other LNCs doing work for them, you're able to ask questions about how they built their brand and what that looks like and the business aspects of it. And so that has all been really fun for me to learn something completely different.
Yeah, and I feel like this theme comes through every single non-traditional nurse that I talk to on these interviews is
Mhm.
how open, especially nurses, I love the community because they are so open to helping each other and,
Mhm.
just inviting you into their world. If you come prepared and professional and really asking good questions, I think everyone's super happy to help you, which I really appreciate.
Yeah, and I think that coming prepared is really important. It's not just, showing up and saying, teach me how to do this. It's, well, like, what have you tried to learn on your own and what do you really need to learn? There's that, old saying that nurses eat their young. And I've been fortunate to never have experienced that truly. And I think it's because I really just come with, this with curiosity, and I try and do my own research. And then I'm truly curious when I'm asking questions about things.
Yeah, the eagerness to learn is, like, very easy to see, and that makes
Hmm.
a big difference, I think, when you're trying to help somebody.
Well, and I think that's really important when you're reviewing a medical record is you have to come with curiosity. You can't open that record thinking you know what happened because you have no idea. And so you have to come with that curiosity, not thinking one side was right or wrong. It's just what does the medical record tell me and what can I deduce from what I've read? And that you have to have true curiosity in order to do that.
Yeah, absolutely. And then the big question of the day. So, if someone is at the bedside watching this interview and thinking, this is a really cool career path I might be interested in, what would be the very first steps they should do to kind of explore that?
Sure. So I think they have to know what type of learner they are. And do they want to take an online course? Would they prefer to have a mentorship with another LNC? There's so many avenues. The first thing that I would do is I would look up the AALNC, American Association of Legal Nurse Consultants, and see what they have to offer and kind of read through the website. There's tons of information on there. There are programs, you can take individual courses, you can take a whole batch of courses. So that to me, because that's the professional organization for the field, that's where I would start.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Amanda. You really gave us like a look into your world of legal nurse consulting. So, thanks for coming today.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me.
And I just love, the flexibility of this is one thing that's beautiful, but I think a lot of nurses love learning new skills and finding ways to grow. And I just think this is such a cool opportunity. And so it was great to talk to you more about it today. So if you enjoyed this conversation, don't forget to subscribe to the Non-Traditional Nurse newsletter for more interviews with awesome nurses, as well as career deep dives delivered straight to your inbox. You can sign up in the link in the description. And thanks for tuning in. We will see you next time.